Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the shadowy streets of Istanbul, not the glossy guidebook version with cruise ships and rooftop selfies, but the old one, where the air smells like rose water and firewood, and the alleys curve like secrets. The lamps burn low, a cat slips past your feet. You turn a corner, and there it is, a warm glow behind latticed windows. The clinking of tiny porcelain cups, and laughter muffled by centuries. The Ottoman coffee house is alive and bubbling, a refuge, a den, a risk, and tonight you're walking straight into it. Just don't get too cozy, because depending on which sultan is on the throne, your next sip might earn you a beheading. You probably won't survive this, but hey, that's part of the charm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I always love seeing who's listening and where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the heart of 16th century Istanbul. The city is veiled in its midnight cloak, and the Bosphorus whispers lullabies to the sleeping shores. But not everyone is asleep. Behind carved wooden doors, there's a world awake, warm, and humming with mischief. You nudge open the door. Inside, a haze of incense, candlelight flickering off brass pots, and a smell burnt, earthy, sweet. Coffee, thick as mud, dark as secrets, and poured like sacred ink into cups that barely hold to sips. You take one. The heat slides into your palms like a trusted lie. Around you, men lean close over boards of Mangala and backgammon. Scholars argue, not shout. A boy recites Hafiz poetry with the reckless confidence of someone who doesn't know the Sultan might be listening. This isn't just a cafe, it's a pocket universe. Coffee isn't just a drink, it's the license to stay up past bedtime and think. And thinking, as it turns out, is dangerous. This drink, the one you're cradling, has only recently arrived in the Ottoman world. Brought through Yemen, then Cairo, up to Istanbul like a sleepy whisper through the spice roads. The beans came from Ethiopia originally, nestled in the mountains like precious stones. Monks there used them to stay awake during long prayers. It worked so well, they started dancing, Sufi style, ecstatic, the usual side effects. By the 1550s, the Ottomans had caught wind, and like most things imperial, coffee was quickly polished, codified, and weaponized as leisure. The first proper coffee house Gavehane pops up in Istanbul around 1554, near the Totakale district. Imagine a snug little building filled with rugs, lanterns, and the low murmur of political opinions. And no one's getting shushed. You settle in on a cushion, tucking your feet beneath you. A man next to you explains uninvited that this place is more than a hangout. It is, he says, swirling his cup, the poor man's university. And he's right. You could call the Ottoman coffee house the empire's great equalizer. Rich or poor, scholar or janissary, here everyone's just a guy with a cup. The real currency is ideas and perhaps the occasional juicy piece of gossip. like which Pasha is building a suspiciously large summer house near the Black Sea, or who smuggled what from Venice last Tuesday, or whether astrology can predict the Sultan's next wife. Quirky tidbit time. One cafe allegedly offered coffee brewed with saffron and sprinkled with diamond dust, not for sparkle, mind you, but for digestive clarity. Side effects may have included bankruptcy and a slightly itchy throat. Still, no one's concerned with the cost tonight. Only the flavor, the ritual, the conversation, and yet, even in this sleepy little room, there's a tension in the air. You feel it now, a slight hesitation in every sip, as if everyone knows this won't last. There's a storm on the horizon, and it's not just the weather. Historians still argue whether the early coffee houses were truly subversive, or whether the elite just thought they were. Either way, the elite weren't thrilled. Imagine you're a sultan lounging in top-copy palace, and you hear there's a new place where your subjects gather without supervision to drink this mind-sharpening brew and talk about poetry, religion, and politics. You might feel a little twitchy, especially when you hear that some of these coffee drinkers are writing satirical verses about you. Still, for now, you're safe. You're tucked in a velvet corner with a hot drink in your hand, and the only rule is, don't spill it. The owner, a bearded man with eyebrows like twin falcons, leans over and offers a refill. He tells you the secret's in the roast. We fry the beans before grinding them. His voice drops to a whisper, imported from Mocha, the real stuff, not that Cairo knockoff. You nod, pretending you know what that means. The second cup is somehow hotter than the first, more bitter, more bold, a little like freedom. Outside, the call to prayer echoes faintly, swallowed by the night. No one moves. That's the power of the place, even as the empire shifts and sways. Beyond these walls, the coffee house holds still timeless, silent, sacred, for now. Because soon, the cozy warmth of these tiny dens will be branded criminal, their comforts too democratic, their laughter too loud, and that drink in your hand about to become public enemy number one. What you don't know that yet, for now, the cup is full, the night is young, and the empire is humming, not yet cracking. The cup trembles a little in your fingers, not from fear, but from the jolt of your third refill. Ottoman coffee doesn't mess around. It's not brewed, it's cooked. And by now, the brew has started to settle into your bloodstream like a warm, slightly jittery guest who brought 3 cats and an opinion about everything. The man across from you, eyes wide and glinting, is midway through explaining how a janissary once defeated 3 chess masters in a row after his 4th demitasse. You nod, politely impressed, though you're not entirely sure that janissary didn't just throw the board at them outside. Dawn hasn't broken yet, but the streets begin to stir. A baker carries a tray of simit past the window, crusts still warm and crusted with sesame. Istanbul never really sleeps. It naps, briefly, and even that only when the coffee runs out. But in here, there's a different kind of energy. Not frantic, like the markets. Not sacred, like the mosques. It's somewhere in between charged and cozy. It's a living paradox. Leisure so intense it threatens the state. Your companion leans closer, whispering like it's a state secret. They say the Sultan's spies sit in the back corners and take notes. You glance over your shoulder. The shadow in the far booth does look suspiciously motionless. Or maybe he's just asleep. It's hard to tell. Ottoman cloaks are very forgiving. What you're sipping tonight is kov, and it's more than a beverage. It's a full-blown social institution, rich, dark, and brewed to a sludge-like consistency. This drink is designed to be savored slowly, argued over, maybe spilled dramatically in protest. Kov's popularity spread faster than a rumor. At a royal banquet, within decades of its rival, Istanbul was overflowing with cafes, each with its own specialty. Some served fortune-telling with every cup your grounds suggest. You're either going to be a poet or arrested. Others hosted improvised theater, debates, or music. Some were known for being loyalist, others for their grumbles. All of them, inherently, were hubs of curiosity. You know, the good kind, the dangerous kind, quirky detail. Some coffee houses were so exclusive that patrons had to knock with a specific rhythm to get in. Miss a beat, you're either denied entry or forced to recite a riddle in rhyming couplets. One wrong syllable, and it's no kov for you, peasant. The thing is, coffee wasn't just addictive because of caffeine, though yes, that helped. It was addictive because of what it let people be, awake, together. Talking dog by the mid-16th century, Ottoman coffee houses had become the secular salons of the empire. Here, someone like you, a traveler with no title, no court favor, no money, to bribe a vizier, could sit across from a scholar, a soldier, or a storyteller and share the same space, the same brew, the same breath. That equality was intoxicating. It was also unfortunately deeply suspicious. Historians still argue whether the early coffee houses truly threatened imperial authority, or if it was just a case of elite overreaction. After all, there's no hard evidence of a revolution being brewed in a demitasse, but you can't ignore the pattern every time political pressure rose. Someone pointed at the coffee houses and muttered, "Too much thinking in there." You pause mid-sip, as if your cup might overhear. The empire, mind you, wasn't the only place figuring out how to handle kov. Venice loved it. The Catholic Church initially hated it, called it the bitter invention of Satan, but later approved it after Pope Clement VIII tried a cup and reportedly said, "This devil's drink is so delicious, it would be a shame to let the infidels have all the fun." Papal endorsement unlocked. Meanwhile, back in Istanbul, your cup is being refilled again. The host grins. "You have scholar's stamina," he says. You're not sure if that's a compliment or a very polite warning. You step outside into the thin pre-dawn light. The call to prayer floats through the air like silk. The city exhales. It's a moment of breath between sips, between regimes, between comfort and crackdown. There are rumors, even now, that the Sultan is not pleased. And not just because of the coffee. It's the gatherings, the talk, the jokes that hit too close to the truth. A rhyme mocking the Grand Vizier's new robe. A whispered theory about the war in Persia. A satirical puppet show where the Sultan is portrayed as a rooster who crows too often. Too many people are laughing in public, and that's dangerous. You pass another cafe. This one's got musicians, lutes, drums, two men improvising verses back and forth about love and loss and the price of fish. It's barely 5 a.m., and the crowd is still clapping. Where else in the empire could this happen? Nowhere. And that's the problem. You take one last look at the lantern-lit door as it swings shut. You can almost hear the lock click behind. You like punctuation at the end of a chapter, because what's coming next won't be quite so warm. A new sultan is rising, a man with opinions, and a sword, and perhaps the empire's first official caffeine intolerance. You're back on those cobbled streets. Istanbul's chill morning air clinging to your sleeves like silk spun from shadows. The city's starting to hum, now vendors setting up stalls. The clatter of donkey carts, someone arguing with a pigeon. But you can't stop thinking about what's brewing behind those shuttered coffee house doors. Because let's be real, this isn't just a beverage. It's a revolution in a porcelain cup dot as you walk. The scent of roasted beans trails behind you like memory. Every block seems to have a new cavern, each more crowded than the last. You duck into another, drawn like a moth to a bean-fueled flame. The floors scattered with cushions, ink-stained hands shuffle manuscripts, and someone's dramatically reenacting a battle with a napkin and a spoon. This, you realize, is where the Ottoman Empire really lives, not in the domes or palaces, but here, where ideas percolate like the coffee itself. And maybe that's why so many people are addicted, not just to the drink, but to the ritual, the theater, the gentle, electric hum of minds rubbing together. Here's your mainstream fact of the night. By the early 17th century, Istanbul boasted hundreds of coffee houses, more than public baths, even more than mosques in some districts. That's how deep the obsession went. And these places weren't just popular, they were essential. The janissaries, the elite soldiers of the empire, had their favorite haunts, often hosting strategy talks over strong brews and baklava. Poets would test their verses on half-distracted crowds. Merchants struck deals between sips. Philosophers monologued about celestial spheres while being studiously ignored. Even beggars found sanctuary in the corners, nursing a single cup for hours while eavesdropping on the chatter of the city's brainiest and boldest. One story claims a man traded coffee readings in exchange for shoe shines. He once predicted a wedding, a promotion, and a flood all in one sitting. Only the flood came true. Still, not bad for a guy using bean sludge. You settle into a spot under a hanging oil lamp. The walls are plastered with calligraphy, old riddles, and a crude sketch of what might be the Grand Vizier as a dancing goat. Subtlety wasn't always a priority. A man beside you declares that coffee sharpens the tongue and loosens the soul. It makes me a better man, he claims, then promptly spills half his cup on his robe. Better, maybe, neater, not so much. What's fascinating is how inclusive it all feels. You don't need noble blood to belong here. You just need an open mind and a few coins. The drink flattens hierarchy, and that's what makes it radical. Historians still argue whether this egalitarian flavor of coffeehouse life Was intentional or accidental? Did people flock here because they were shut out elsewhere? Or did the coffee house simply offer a more delicious form of democracy? Either way, it was working. Too well, perhaps. Because with great community comes great paranoia. And paranoia doesn't like music. Laughter or rhyming insults. Whispers begin to creep through the streets. The authorities are watching. A shadow falls over the city knot, all at once, but in drips and drizzles. Like bad coffee, you hear that in some districts, the guards have started to visit the more lively cafes, taking notes, asking questions, casually knocking over tables. Some cafes mysteriously close. Others shift underground literally. Cellars, back rooms, even boats converted into floating cafes on the Golden Horn. One particularly daring host uses his bathhouse's steam room to hide his coffee operation. Nothing like sipping espresso in a towel while avoiding arrest. A quirky detail. One creative merchant reportedly disguised his coffee house as a bakery, claiming the smell came from spiced loaves. Historians are divided on whether anyone believed him, especially since no bread was ever seen exiting the building. But here's the thing: you don't stop drinking coffee once you've started. You just get cleverer about how you do it. You overhear someone whispering about a new technique. Hide the cup inside your cloak sleeve. Sip when no one's looking. Then pretend to be humming a hymn. It's clunky, but oddly effective. Ottoman stealth mode. Activated, still. Even the cleverest cloak trick can't hide the truth. The Empire's caught in a strange moment, drunk on control, hung over on freedom. And the drink at the center of it all, it's not wine. It's not beer. It's cov. That syrupy, searing elixir. The kind of drink that keeps your body still and your thoughts wide awake. And that's the real addiction. Not the caffeine, not the warmth, not even the flavor. It's the wakefulness, the alertness, the invitation to examine the world while everyone else is asleep. You finish your cup. The grounds stick to the bottom, forming a shape like a lion, or maybe it's a ship. Either way, it feels like an omen. Something is coming. Something you might not be able to sip your way through. But tonight, for now, you're still welcome. In these rooms, still cradling a warmth that defies the cold outside. The door creaks. A gust of morning light spills in. A man steps inside, face partially covered, eyes sharp. He scans the room. You recognize that look. He's not here for coffee. He's here to decide who should never drink it again. You don't move. Nobody does. That's the first rule when the coffee police, yes. Those exist now enter the room. You freeze mid-sip, mid-joke, mid-scratch if needed. Stillness is your only alibi. If you look too casual, they'll suspect. You're trying to act casual. If you look too tense, well, they're not fond of nervous types either. Best to channel your inner pillow. Blank, soft, unthreatening. The man in the doorway isn't wearing an official uniform, but you know, the slow, deliberate scan. The fingers twitching like they miss the feel of scrolls or shackles. This isn't just a curious passerby. This is someone who reports to someone whose job is to make other people disappear. Possibly into a dungeon, possibly into a vat of hot coffee beans. Though that's likely an exaggeration, you remember the name whispered in the alleyways. Earlier, Sultan Murad IV, the new one, young, sharp-eyed, known to ride horses into council chambers just to test who flinches. And worse than all of that, he's a caffeine teetotaler. That's right, your ruler doesn't drink the very thing that fuels his empire's soul. To him, coffee isn't warm comfort, it's warm chaos, liquid insubordination. You overheard someone say, Murad believes coffee stirs rebellion in the blood. Another claimed he read a pamphlet linking coffee to premature beard loss. Either way, something has hardened in him. Something anti-bean. Historians still argue whether Murad's crusade against coffee was born from genuine concern, religious pressure, or simply a flair for the dramatic. After all, banning the empire's favorite beverage makes quite the imperial statement. It's like outlawing storytelling or outlawing a wait. He did that too. You watch as the agent moves through the cafe, one hand behind his back, the other trailing along a table's edge, pausing briefly over a half-empty cup. He sniffs, tucks, moves on. People avoid eye contact like it's an ancient curse. You dare to glance around. Gone are the laughter and poetry. Even the smoke from the charcoal burners seems to coil more quietly. This isn't the same cafe you slipped into just last week. It's been hushed, flattened, polished into politeness. And then, with no fanfare, the man exits. The door creaks shut. A beat pauses. 2. Then someone coughs. Then the entire room exhales at once, like it had been holding a lungful of ink. Your host mutters, "That one's from the third bureau." You don't ask what the other two bureaus do. You don't want to know. Instead, you reach for your now cold coffee. The chill matches the mood. So, what happened? How did a drink go from divine inspiration to state offense? Let's rewind for your historical main course. In 1633, Sultan Murad IV issued one of the most infamous decrees of his reign, total ban on coffee houses. Not just coffee, mind you, but the entire institution around it. Shops were shuttered. Repeat offenders were beaten. Some were executed. Rumors claim the Sultan would sometimes roam the streets, in disguise, catching drinkers red-handed. Imagine dying because you ordered a macchiato too loudly. To make matters worse, Murad paired his coffee ban with bans on alcohol, tobacco, and loud music, effectively declaring war on nightlife, pleasure, and decent Tuesdays. There's a particularly juicy fringe tidbit about a coffee house owner who painted his walls with camouflage so soldiers couldn't spot the cafe from the street. Didn't work. The smell gave it away. That's the thing with coffee. It wants to be known. It needs to be shared. So, what did people do? Well, some obeyed. They switched to tea, water, or silence. Others resisted in quieter ways, hosting secret brews and hammams, turning back rooms of barber shops into pseudo-cafes. There are stories of coded knock systems, passwords, even underground tunnels connecting bean speakeasies. Yes, bean speakeasies. History truly is a flat circle. You find yourself wandering again, weaving between stalls and alleyways where merchants whisper like they're plotting a heist. You catch snippets of conversation My cousin's got Yemeni beans, one says, brewed in a jug that looks like a jug but isn't. The empire hasn't stopped drinking. It's just drinking with more flair. There's a quiet, ironic joke among the city's outlaws now. Coffee doesn't wake you up anymore, it keeps you alive. You duck into a market and spot a bundle of scrolls tied with a frayed red ribbon. One is a satirical play, unsigned, titled The Sultan and the Spoon. It's barely legible, smuggled out of a banned cafe and passed hand to hand like a relic. You buy it anyway. The seller gives you a nod like you've just joined a secret order. And maybe you have, because every forbidden sip is a quiet rebellion. Now, every cup is a protest against the flattening of thought, the silencing of wonder, the denial of laughter. This crackdown isn't about the drink. It never was. It's about what the drink does. Coffee houses weren't just serving beverages. They were serving possibilities. Sultan Murad may ban the bean, but he can't ban what it awakens. And as night falls again over Istanbul's skyline, the lanterns begin to flicker back on in the hidden corners of the city, softly, carefully, just enough to brew a revolution. You move through Istanbul like a ghost now, eyes scanning for symbols, signs, secret knocks. The city hasn't gone quiet, it's just gone quiet in public. Behind drawn curtains, it still hums. But out here on the open street, you've got to wear a different face. One that doesn't smell of roasted beans or sleepless conversation. One that would pass a surprise inspection from the Sultan himself. You pass a man selling buttons, or so it seems. But when you brush past his stand and murmur, "The night is bitter," he replies softly, "But the cup is warm." And just like that, a door creaks open behind him, a narrow alley, a rust-colored curtain. And the soft glow of forbidden comfort. Welcome to the underground. Literally. You descend into a vaulted cellar, low-lit and buzzing with a murmur that can only mean one thing. People are still gathering, still thinking, still laughing quietly, but stubbornly. There's a copper kettle whizzing on the coals. A small boy pours a syrupy stream into a line of cups with hands steadier than most. Surgeons. In the corner, someone plays a string saz, its music barely louder than a whisper. Mainstream historical fact time. Despite Murad IV's aggressive ban in the 1630s, many of Istanbul's coffee houses simply moved beneath the surface into basements, attics, and even graveyard watch houses. The culture adapted with the elasticity of a well-boiled bean. Coffee didn't die. It just went noise. You tuck yourself into a corner seat, the cushion sighing under your weight. There's something about these secret places that makes every sip taste richer, not just because of the beans, but because of what you're risking, because of what it means. You overhear two men debating the real reason Murad hates coffee. He was possessed by a jinn during Ramadan, says one, half joking. No, says the other, dead serious. He saw the future in a cup once. Didn't like what it showed. Fringe tidbit. There were indeed rumors in the 17th century of royal diviners using coffee grounds for prophecy. Ottoman fortune-telling, awful, became a thriving underground art, especially among women. Entire readings could be hidden in the folds of a veil or the base of a cup. like secret newspapers made of sludge and stars. Historians still argue whether the rise of coffee fortune-telling was a resistance tactic, a spiritual trend, or just another way to charge extra for caffeine. Whatever the reason, the idea stuck. The inside of your mug wasn't just dregs, it was destiny. And in these basements, destiny was being rewritten every night. But it wasn't all poetry and parables. The Sultan's wrath wasn't just a theatrical tantrum. It was deadly. Someone at the next table leans in and whispers about the most famous coffee martyr Sheikh Bahaddin, who refused to close his cafe near the docks. They dragged him out mid-cup, the man says, eyes flicking nervously toward the stairs, and they made the other customers watch. You're not sure if that's true. It might be. Or it might be the kind of story people repeat to remind each other that the stakes are real. Because in Murat IV's Istanbul, every bean has a shadow. And that's the paradox you're now steeped in. The more he cracks down, the more flavor seeps out of the cracks. The stricter the ban, the richer the brew. The city's veins now pulse with an underground rhythm, slower, quieter, but persistent. You notice a man at the far end of the room. Pass something across the table. Not gold, not silver books. Manuscripts, ideas. It's hard to tell what's more illegal in this room, the coffee or the thoughts. You sip yours slowly. It tastes like defiance and cardamom. The host, a weary man with ink on his fingers, approaches with a chessboard. He doesn't ask if you want to play. He just sets it down. You recognize the game immediately. It's not about pawns and kings. Each move is a message. You respond with your knight. He nods. No words, just the clink of porcelain and the creak of the ceiling above. You wonder what happens when a society's best thinkers, artists, rebels, and lovers are all forced into hiding. You get brilliance forged under pressure. You get music that's hushed, but sharper. You get jokes told in code, rhymes that double as roadmaps, and lullabies that smuggle histories. You get a revolution that tastes like cinnamon and ends with a faint ring of grounds at the bottom of the cup. And you're in it now, one sip at a time. The session ends when a single cough rings out 3 beats, spaced precisely. Everyone freezes. Then the room folds itself away like a handkerchief. Cups vanish. Cushions are stacked. The chessboard disappears beneath a false floor tile. You emerge into the street as if nothing ever happened. Just another passerby, yawning. In the moonlight, but in your chest. That familiar warmth, and behind your lips. A grin that tastes like roasted beans and secret songs. The city above still sleeps, like it's been drugged. You drift beneath oil lamp shadows and stitched up silences, your breath ghosting in the night air. Thinking back to the game of chess in the underground cafe. One wrong move, and you'd have toppled more than pawns. But you played it smooth. Now, you carry the taste of victory on your tongue, and maybe a bit of cinnamon. You take a side alley behind the old spice market, where everything smells faintly of saffron, sweat, and sea breeze. There's a figure leaning against a wall, an older woman with a veil drawn low over her eyes, and a voice like cracked silk. "You're new," she says, not asking. You nod. She gestures to a brass hookah pipe. But you're not here to inhale. You're here to listen. So she begins to talk, not loudly, not hurriedly, just enough that the city leans in. Mainstream historical fact. Before Sultan Murad IV's coffee ban, Istanbul boasted hundreds of coffee houses, each one a nucleus of public life. They weren't just places to drink, they were bulletin boards of gossip, stages for amateur poets, unofficial parliaments, and sometimes even matchmaking stations. Everyone from tailors to janissaries to low-ranking clerics gathered here to argue politics, trade jokes, recite epic poems, or whisper court rumors. But there was a price to all that chatter. Power. The kind of power that keeps a sultan up at night. You listen as the woman recalls the rise of the Ottoman storytellers. One man, one stool, one long tale that pulled a whole room together like threads in a tapestry. Some wore costumes, others changed voices like masks. One famous Meder allegedly performed the entire siege of Constantinople using only a spoon and a feather. It brought the house down, and then, the woman adds, eyes narrowing, they started slipping in messages. Medes began sneaking criticism of the court into their tales. Fables with thinly veiled metaphors about unjust rulers, greedy viziers, or laws that cut too deeply, a tiger that banned dancing, a wolf who taxed the birds for singing. Fringe tidbit. One storyteller supposedly got away with mocking the Sultan directly by playing both roles in his story, the wise king and the foolish tyrant. When asked which one was meant to represent the Sultan, he bowed deeply and said, whichever one he prefers, of course. Bold man, likely dead now. Historians still argue whether Murad cracked down on coffee houses because of the drink, or because of the meda, or because of what happens when too many minds gather too freely in one room. You shift your weight, feeling the cobblestones under your soles. The woman notices and smirks. Don't worry, she says. No one spies. Here, not anymore. You're not so sure. The conversation turns to the secret signals of the banned cafes. A red tassel above a door meant safe entry. A green lantern warned of approaching patrols. If someone ordered double phone, it meant they were an informant. Unless they were just really picky. You begin to notice how the city's texture has changed. There are still vendors on corners, sure, but they sell silence now. People avoid eye contact. Dogs bark less. Even the gulls seem to glide more quietly above the Bosphorus. You follow the woman to a small tea house still pretending to serve nothing but herbal blends. The owner greets her with a bow and slides open a back panel in the wall. You step through, into what feels like a memory-soft rugs, low cushions, and a dome ceiling painted with faded stars. There are 10 people inside, all talking at once, and yet not loudly. This is the Cara Dossi, the poet's room. They recite verses that blend dreams, rebellion, and baking tips. One man stands and declares, the bean boils where the law cannot. The cup spills what the court forgets. In every sip, the world rewrites itself. There's polite applause. You have no idea what it means, but you clap anyway. And suddenly, you understand. This is why they drink. Not just for caffeine or comfort, but for clarity, for communion, for culture. Coffee houses weren't just places, they were languages. And when the state banned them, the people just spoke more fluently in code. One poet raises a toast with an empty cup. To the Sultan, she says, everyone. Pauses. She adds with a grin, may his dreams be restless and his nights beamless. Laughter, low but genuine. You almost feel safe. Almost. Then the knock comes. To short raps, a pause. Then one long. Everyone freezes. The poets vanish behind curtains. You find yourself alone in the middle of the room, like a half-written sentence. The owner appears beside you like smoke and whispers, back panel. Now, you duck, crawl, and tumble into a narrow brick corridor that leads you outside, through a drain pipe, into a fig orchard. The fruit hangs heavy and fragrant in the night. Somewhere behind you, boots clatter on stone, and you breathe. Out here, the stars don't care who drinks what. You lie back against the earth and feel the hum of 1,000 secret poems pulsing through the soil. The city is still telling its stories. And tomorrow night, you'll be back. Section 7. You wake late the next morning, sunlight slanting through your shutters in pale, lazy ribbons. Your tongue is dry, your thoughts thick, but your fingers still smell faintly of roasted beans. Somewhere, a rooster is trying very hard to convince Istanbul it's still in charge of time. You stretch and crack your joints, like a marionette being tugged into place. Then set out again carefully, cautiously. The city has shifted while you slept. That's how it works now. The rules change daily. The walls whisper, and the whispers walk faster than you do. Word on the street is that Murad IV has escalated. No more symbolic punishments or threats. Now, the guards carry real blades and real lists of names. Informants are everywhere. Even the pigeons look suspicious. Mainstream historical fact. During the peak of his reign, Murad IV's enforcers conducted random street inspections, especially at night. He made surprise patrols himself, often in disguise, arresting and executing violators on the spot. Yes, the Sultan of the Empire would dress down and walk his own streets like a shadowy avenger, catching citizens in the act of sipping. It sounds theatrical. It was theatrical, but also terrifying. You pass a bakery that smells like heaven and hear a mother whisper to her child. Not so loud talking brings trouble. The child nods. You realize, not for the first time, that this isn't just a war on coffee. It's a war on comfort, on spontaneity, on togetherness. You duck into a public bathhouse to blend in, pretending you've come to soak away your sins in steam. But even here, in the clouded warmth, you overhear a conversation through the fog. Did you hear about the printing guy? One man murmurs, the Armenian one, gone. Gone how? A shrug. Gone like ink on wet paper. Fringe tidbit. Several print shops, especially those run by minority communities, doubled as covert meeting points for intellectuals and coffee drinkers, hidden behind false walls or through trapdoors. They distributed banned pamphlets and even hand-drawn maps of surviving cafe networks. One infamous pamphlet, allegedly titled The Caffeine Conspiracy, mocked the Sultan as a beanless brute, Possession of it meant death. Historians still argue whether Murad's suppression was more political paranoia than puritanical passion. Was he afraid of sedition, or was it personal? Some say he'd once been humiliated by a satirical play in a coffee house. Others whisper that his brother, Osman, too executed in a palace, who had found refuge and sympathy in coffeehouse circles before his downfall. Maybe Murad saw every coffee cup as a potential tombstone for a throne. And yet, even in this crackdown, even in this fear, the coffee keeps flowing. You find yourself drawn to the harbor that evening, where salt air tangles with the smell of wood smoke and distant laughter. A group of young sailors plays dice by a crate that definitely shouldn't smell like Yemenese beans, but very much does. One of them nods at you. "New here?" he asks. You nod. He tosses you a cup. "Welcome to the stupid side of smart." You sip. "It's strong. Bitter. Perfect." They tell you about the smugglers, now the ones bringing beans in from across the empire. From Syria, Egypt, Persia, hidden in bundles of dates or hollowed out pomegranates. One guy, they say, made an entire false wall out of compressed coffee bricks and passed it off as insulation. Genius. Possibly arrested, but genius. The leader of this group, a weary girl named Sila, with a jagged scar across her eyebrow tells. She once saw a customs officer sniff a crate, frown, and mutter, "Smells like heresy." Then he waved it through. You all laugh. It's a stupid joke, but you're grateful for it. Then Sila gets serious. "Do you know why this matters?" she asks. You start to answer, but she cuts you off. "Because it's not about coffee. It never was. It's about deciding when the day ends, about choosing when you rest, when you talk, when you breathe. That's why they want it gone." She's right. Coffee was more than a drink. It was a ritual, a declaration, a rhythm. It gave people something they weren't supposed to have. Time to think. You look out over the water. Ships bob gently like sleeping giants. Somewhere out there, more beans are sailing toward the city hidden in spice barrels, jam jars, maybe even hollowed out fish. The battle is still going, and you're no longer just a witness. You're a participant now. You walk away from the harbor with a small, hot bundle in your coat pocket. No one asks what it is, but they all know. Your heartbeat ticks like a kettle coming to boil. The night's still young, and the revolution smells like roasted hope. Night drapes itself over Istanbul like a velvet cloak, cool and thick enough to muffle footsteps, but not whispers. You weave through the maze of alleys, each one lined with shuttered windows that hide secret lives and silent rebellions. Your pocket presses against your ribs a small, precious packet that promises warmth and resistance. The streets are quieter than usual, but that doesn't mean they're empty. Shadowed figures slip past, their voices low and urgent. You catch snippets. The Sultan's new decree, more patrols. The poet's last verse. You make your way to a nondescript door marked only by a faded red tassel, symbol now worn but still potent. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and the bittersweet scent of brewing coffee, mingled with the tang of incense and whispered hopes. This is one of the last surviving coffee houses, the heart of the underground. Network. The walls are plastered with poetry, secret maps, and faded posters warning of spies. The room hums with quiet energy, a fragile pulse beating against oppression. Mainstream historical fact. Despite harsh crackdowns, these coffee houses became centers of resistance and intellectual exchange, playing a crucial role in preserving Ottoman cultural identity during Murad IV's reign. They were hubs where ideas fermented, from political dissent to artistic innovation, even under the shadow of fear. You settle into a corner, nursing a cup that's almost too hot, savoring the complex notes of cardamom and dark roast. Around you, voices blend into a soft murmur of stories, songs, and debates. A young man recites a satirical poem about the Sultan's obsession with order and control, drawing nervous laughter. Fringe tidbit. Some patrons believed that coffee had mystical properties, capable of awakening hidden truths and inspiring visions. Secret societies allegedly formed within these cafes, using coffee as a sacrament to bond members who plotted against the regime. Whether myth or reality, these stories fueled both hope and paranoia. Historians still argue whether the coffee ban was primarily about controlling a substance or suppressing the social gatherings that threatened centralized power. Was the drink itself the enemy, or the community it brewed? You overhear a heated debate about the origins of coffee. Some claim it came from Yemen, others Ethiopia, and some insist it's a divine gift from the heavens. The conversation spirals into tales of shepherds, mystical goats, and ancient monks. The story shifts like the steam rising from your cup, elusive and enchanting. Suddenly, the door creaks a subtle but unmistakable sound. Heads snap toward the entrance. Eyes flicker like candle flames in the dim light. The room freezes. A figure steps inside, cloaked and hooded. The tension tightens like a drawn bowstring. Then, a soft voice cuts through the silence. I bring news. The crowd exhales collectively, some with relief, others with dread. Information is currency here, more valuable than gold or spices. Tonight, the news will shape the next moves in their silent war. You lean in, heart beating in time with the crackling fire. The story unfolding promises to redraw the lines of power, challenge the Sultan's grip, and perhaps, just perhaps, change the fate of an empire one cup at a time. Asterisk, you don't need to be a detective to sense that the tension in the room is thicker than the coffee's foam. The hooded figure pulls back their cloak, revealing the sharp eyes of a courier known for slipping through the Sultan's watchful nets. Like smoke through a keyhole, they speak quickly, voice low and urgent. There's a caravan moving through. The Taurus Mountains carrying enough coffee beans to stock the city for a year. But the Sultan's guards have set traps along the route. They're waiting to crush it. Your fingers tighten around your cup. The stakes have just raised from whispered rumors to full-scale siege. Mainstream historical fact. The Ottoman Empire relied heavily on trade routes from Yemen and the Arabian Peninsula for coffee beans. Control of these routes was crucial, not only for commerce, but for maintaining the flow of culture and communication. That coffee house is nurtured. Murad IV's crackdown included targeting these very supply lines. hoping to starve the coffee houses into silence. You glance around, noting the mix of fear and fierce determination on every face. This isn't just about drinking anymore. It's about survival of ideas, of traditions, and perhaps even of freedom itself. Fringe tidbit. There's a legend about a mysterious coffee ghost. A shadowy figure said to protect smugglers and lovers of the brew. Said to appear as a swirling mist with the aroma of roasted beans. This spirit supposedly leads caravans safely past patrols, while most dismiss it as superstition. Some swear by sightings and whispered prayers to the coffee ghost. Historians still argue whether this myth had real influence on smuggling operations or was simply a comforting story to those risking everything for a taste of normalcy. The courier hands out coded maps and instructions to trusted individuals, the network of coffee lovers. And Rebels is more intricate than you imagined. Paths wind through mountains, forests, and secret caves, each waypoint marked by symbols only known to those in the know. You're handed a map, the ink slightly smudged, the paper worn. Tracing the route with your finger, you feel the weight of the journey ahead fraught with danger, but pulsing with the hope of a fresh brew. Outside, the city hums, oblivious or willfully ignorant of the quiet war brewing beneath its streets. But you know better now. You're a player in this dance between control and rebellion, where every cup poured is an act of defiance. You leave the cafe under the cloak of darkness, the packet of coffee beans tucked safely in your coat. The night air is cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and roasted nuts. A cat crosses your path, eyes gleaming like secrets. You smile to yourself. In a city where coffee is forbidden, even the smallest ritual becomes revolutionary, and you're ready to sip on that revolution. Asterisk, the city still breathes around you. But now it feels like a different place, like Istanbul after hours, when only the brave and the restless roam. Your steps echo off cobblestones slick with last night's rain, each splash a punctuation in the silent story unfolding beneath the moonlight. You head toward the edge of the city, where the horizon softens into hills dusted with olive groves and wild thyme. Here, the Ottoman Empire seems less like a sprawling power and more like a patchwork quilt stitched together with secrets, whispers, and half-forgotten legends. Mainstream historical fact: the coffee ban wasn't just about the city. It extended deep into rural provinces, where farmers faced severe penalties if caught cultivating or trading coffee plants. Murad IV's inspectors roamed the countryside, destroying crops and punishing entire villages to stamp out what he called the devil's brew. You come across a small farmhouse bathed in soft candlelight. Inside, an old man stirs a pot, the aroma of herbs mingling with something richer coffee. He looks up, eyes twinkling. "You've come far," he says. "Coffee is more than a drink. Here, it's memory, rebellion, a prayer." He tells you about the secret cultivation of coffee bushes hidden among olive trees and fig orchards. Farmers passed down knowledge like treasure, teaching children to guard the plants from prying eyes. Fringe tidbit: some peasants believed coffee plants had magical properties, able to protect homes from evil spirits and bad luck. They planted Coffee bushes near doorways and windows, whispering blessings with every seedling. Others claimed the beans could cure ailments or even grant visions. Historians still argue whether these folk beliefs influenced Ottoman attitudes toward coffee, or if they were later romanticized by storytellers. Either way, the connection between the people and the plant was undeniable. You watch as the old man prepares a simple cup roasting beans over an open flame, grinding them with a rough stone and boiling the mixture in a small copper pot. The process is slow, deliberate, almost sacred. He hands you the cup. You lift it to your lips and taste the history, the bitter warmth, the smoky depth, the quiet rebellion. Outside, the night stretches wide and full of stars. Indifferent to human laws and bans, you realize that in every corner of this empire, whether bustling city or quiet village, coffee pulses like a secret heartbeat. A thread connecting people through fear, hope, and a shared longing for freedom. And despite the Sultan's iron grip, that heartbeat will not be silenced. You thank the old man and step back into the night, feeling lighter, warmer. The city awaits, ready to tell its next story, one sip at a time, asterisk. The dawn creeps over the Bosphorus, painting the water in molten gold and pinks that make you wonder how such beauty can exist. Alongside so much turmoil, you sit by the shore, the salty breeze weaving through your hair like a gentle reminder that life, no matter how harsh, carries on in this quiet moment. You reflect on the strange dance of coffee and power a game played in shadow and steam, in whispered conversations and stolen cups. Mainstream historical fact: Murad IV's coffee beneficially lasted until his death in 1640, after which the restrictions gradually loosened. His iron-fisted approach left a complicated legacy, a city and empire that both feared and revered the drink, which eventually became a symbol of Ottoman culture and hospitality. You think back to all the faces you've seen, the stories you've heard, the risks taken for something as simple and as profound as a cup of coffee. Fringe tidbit: some Ottoman poets wrote verses praising coffee as a muse that stirred creativity and unlocked the mind's hidden chambers. One poem compared the drink to a dark, divine potion capable of chasing away the demons of dullness. Whether inspired by caffeine or desperation, these works captured the longing for escape and connection. Historians still argue whether the ban's severity was a temporary lapse or a reflection of deeper anxieties about social change and the erosion of traditional authority. Did coffee threaten more than the Sultan's health? Did it challenge the very structure of Ottoman society? You stand and watch as fishermen haul in their nets, the city waking slowly. Somewhere nearby, a kettle whistles, promising warmth and a taste of defiance. You realize the story isn't over. The coffee ban may have ended, but the relationship between this mysterious brew and the people it touched has only deepened. It's a tale of rebellion and resilience, of human connection brewed strong in the face of control. And you, dear listener, are part of that story now. So, as you sip your next cup, remember, you're drinking more than coffee. You're drinking history rich, complex, and always a little bit dangerous. The streets now buzz with an energy that feels almost electric. A city slowly waking from a long, troubled dream. The scent of coffee mingles with fresh bread and sea, salt, weaving through open windows and bustling markets like a secret invitation to remember. The simple pleasures stolen away. You find yourself drawn back to a favorite cafe, its battered sign hanging crooked on rusty chains. Inside, the clatter of cups and quiet laughter feel like a small victory against the lingering shadow. The band. Mainstream historical fact. By the late 17th century, coffee houses had firmly re-established themselves as vital social hubs throughout the Ottoman Empire. These places weren't just for drinking coffee, they were arenas for debate, music, poetry, and political discussion. The coffee ban became a distant memory, but its echoes shaped how people gathered and spoke. You sit near a group of elderly men playing backgammon, their faces etched with the lines of 100 stories. One of them catches your eye and nods, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding. Fringe tidbit. Some coffee houses became famous for their wise women or female poets, who, despite societal restrictions, used these spaces to influence culture and politics through storytelling and verse. Their voices, though often hidden, left a subtle but lasting mark on Ottoman society. Historians still argue about the true extent of women's participation in coffeehouse culture. Were they silent observers or secret leaders? The answer may lie in the hushed corners and half-forgotten verses. A young poet begins to recite softly, weaving images of dark nights, stolen sips, and dreams brewed in cups thick with hope and defiance. You listen, entranced, feeling the pulse of a city that refuses to be silenced. The coffee is strong, the air warm, and the moment timeless. You realize that the story of the Ottoman coffee ban is more than history. It's a testament to the power of community, resilience, and the quiet rebellion in every shared cup. And so, you settle in, ready to savor the next chapter. One sip, one story at a time. You wander out of the cafe. The early afternoon sun casting long shadows over the bustling bazaar. The colors swirl around you, crimson textiles, gleaming copper, piles of spices that smell like dreams, an orchestra of senses that tells the story of an empire, alive with commerce and culture. But beneath this vibrant surface, you know there's a tension that lingers like the bitter aftertaste of strong coffee. Mainstream historical fact. The coffee ban was not just about suppressing a beverage. It was about controlling the social fabric. Coffee houses had become places where ideas percolated, political dissent, philosophical debates, even plots against the state. Murad IV feared these gatherings as hotbeds of rebellion. You notice a man standing near a spice store, nervously scanning the crowd. His eyes meet yours briefly, a silent warning or an invitation. It's hard to tell. Fringe tidbit. Some coffee houses were rumored to have secret compartments and hidden rooms, accessible only to trusted patrons. These clandestine spaces hosted everything from poetry readings to secret councils planning resistance. Historians still argue about how widespread and organized this underground coffeehouse network truly was. Was it a loose affiliation or a tightly knit revolutionary cell? The truth might be lost in the steam of countless cups. You recall a story about a poet who used coffee as a metaphor for the empire. Itself bitter yet invigorating, harsh but essential. His verses were banned, but whispered in cafes like forbidden prayers as the day unfolds. You realize that the coffee ban was less a decree and more a battleground, a simmering conflict between tradition and change, control and freedom. You sip a clandestine cup hidden beneath your cloak, feeling the warmth spread like a secret rebellion in your chest. The Empire may have tried to snuff out the coffee flame, but the spark was too bright, too alive. And in that glow, you find yourself. The sun dips lower, bathing the city in a mellow amber glow that softens the sharp edges of the day. You stroll through winding alleys where shadows lengthen, carrying with them the secrets of centuries past stories steeped in steam and whispers. You pass a small stand, where an elderly woman sells sweet pastries alongside steaming cups of coffee. Her smile a quiet rebellion against decades of prohibition and fear. Mainstream historical fact. After Murat IV's death, coffee houses flourished again. But the empire's relationship with coffee remained complex. While coffee became a symbol of Ottoman hospitality and culture, authorities kept a wary eye on these social hubs, occasionally imposing restrictions when political tensions flared. You notice a young couple sharing a cup, their laughter light and hopeful against the backdrop of an empire still grappling with control and freedom. Fringe tidbit. Some tales suggest that coffee houses were the birthplace of the first Ottoman newspapers printed. Sheets shared among patrons that spread news, satire, and political commentary. These coffee papers were sometimes smuggled in from Europe, blending Western ideas with Ottoman tradition. Historians still debate the exact role coffee houses played in the empire's media landscape. Were they mere backdrops or active players in shaping public opinion and political movements? You savor the bittersweet taste of your own cup, feeling connected to those who resisted, who dreamed, who dared to sip despite the dangers. Coffee, you realize, is more than a drink. It's a language of resilience, a quiet declaration that life, culture, and freedom cannot be bottled or banned. And as the city's lights twinkle on like stars, brought low, you know this story will continue brewed fresh with every dawn and every shared cup. You breathe in the evening air, rich with history and hope, and step forward into the night. The sun dips lower, bathing the city in a mellow amber glow that softens the sharp edges of the day. You stroll through winding alleys where shadows lengthen, carrying with them the secrets of centuries past stories steeped in steam and whispers. You pass a small stand where an elderly woman sells sweet pastries alongside steaming cups of coffee. Her smile a quiet rebellion against decades of prohibition and fear. Mainstream historical fact. After Murat IV's death, coffee houses flourished again, but the empire's relationship with coffee remained complex. While coffee became a symbol of Ottoman hospitality and culture, authorities kept a wary eye on these social hubs, occasionally imposing restrictions when political tensions flared. You notice a young couple sharing a cup, their laughter light and hopeful against the backdrop of an empire still grappling with control and freedom. Fringe tidbit. Some tales suggest that coffee houses were the birthplace of the first Ottoman. Newspapers printed sheets shared among patrons that spread news, satire, and political commentary. These coffee papers were sometimes smuggled in from Europe, blending Western ideas with Ottoman tradition. Historians still debate the exact role coffee houses played in the empire's media landscape. Were they mere backdrops or active players in shaping public opinion and political movements? You savor the bittersweet taste of your own cup, feeling connected to those who resisted, who dreamed, who dared to sip despite the dangers. Coffee, you realize, is more than a drink, it's a language of resilience, a quiet declaration that life, culture, and freedom cannot be bottled or banned. And as the city's lights twinkle on like stars brought low, you know this story will continue brewed fresh with every dawn and every shared cup. You breathe in the evening air, rich with history and hope, and step forward into the night. The night deepens, and the city around you settles into a soft, murmuring lullaby. The gentle ripple of the Bosphorus and the distant call of the muezzin weave a tapestry of sound that soothes the restless heart. You pause on a quiet rooftop, looking out over the glowing mosaic of lights, feeling the cool breeze carry the faint scent of coffee and jasmine. Mainstream historical fact. The legacy of the Ottoman coffee ban is paradoxical. Though meant to suppress coffee's influence, it ultimately heightened its allure and cemented its place in social and cultural life. Not only within the empire, but across the world has Ottoman coffee culture spread beyond its borders. You think of the countless people who resisted, adapted, and celebrated coffee in secret. Their quiet defiance creating ripples that reached far beyond the palace walls. Fringe tidbit. Some say the Ottoman coffee ban inspired secret coffee recipes and brewing techniques that remain closely guarded family treasures to this day. These rituals, passed down through generations, add layers of mystery and magic to every cup. Historians still debate how much the ban shaped modern coffee culture versus natural evolution of trade and tastes. Either way, the story of Ottoman coffee is a story of endurance, adaptation, and passion. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, savoring the moment, the lingering warmth of your cup, the hum of a city that never truly sleeps, and the knowledge that some stories, like the taste of coffee, only grow richer with time. The empire's shadow may have tried to snuff out this simple pleasure, but it lives on. In every quiet sip and every shared smile. And now, dear listener, it's time to rest. Let the memories of steam, shadow, and rebellion fade gently, like the last sip of a perfect cup. You're wrapped in the warmth of history, and tomorrow, the story continues. Word count. 1. 50 to wind down 300 words. The night deepens slowly now. A soft velvet curtain drawn over the bustling city. The sounds around you grow quieter, blending into a gentle, rhythmic hum, a lullaby woven from the whispers of ancient streets and the faint, lingering aroma of roasted beans. Imagine yourself resting there, the cool night air brushing softly against your skin, carrying with it stories steeped in time. Each breath you take is a slow sip of history, warm and calming, flowing through you like the smoothest of coffees, bitter and sweet, familiar yet mysterious. Let your thoughts drift gently, like steam rising from a freshly poured cup, curling and fading into the night sky. There is comfort in knowing that even through bands and shadows, through whispered secrets and quiet rebellions, the simple act of sharing coffee brought people together, connecting hearts and minds across centuries. It's a testament to resilience, to the small joys that refuse to be silenced. As you settle deeper into your rest, feel the softness of this moment wrap around you like a well-loved blanket. Let the stories and aromas fade gently, leaving only warmth and peace. Tomorrow is another day, and the tale continues, brewed anew with every sunrise. So, close your eyes now. Breathe in the calm, the warmth, the quiet magic of the past mingling with the present. Let sleep carry you away, soft and steady, like the last sip of a perfect cup. Sweet dreams, my friend.